Cameron, have you heard of the band GEESE?
You know, I'm not super familiar with them. I've seen their name come up a bunch. I think they had a Coachella performance. So other than that, I haven't really I've seen it come up. Like, you know, I've seen it in the news media. You see it come up, you see it go by, but I haven't dug deep.
That's a perfect answer, by the way. There is a reason why you have seen them come up so much lately.
Okay. It's giving, I told you, okay, before we started the podcast, I told you this, but I'm going to tell it to all of you. It's giving King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard.
Yeah.
Like, it just gives that energy to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just, they're both animal bands. You know?
Yeah. Lizards, geese. They both have a sort of like, they're just like four white dudes in a room.
I like that.
Yeah.
We got it for guys with guitars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say pretty different genres.
Totally different worlds.
GEESE, to me, by the way, for those of you who haven't heard, they're kind of shambolic pop. They remind me a lot of like the late 60s heroin pop.
Okay.
The Velvet Underground kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say you can draw a real...
Not the Velvet Sundown.
No, the Velvet Underground. I'd say you can draw a clear line between them.
That's cool.
They have a very like New York City heroin pop thing going on.
That's one thing I was aware. They're founded in like 2016 from New York. Mm-hmm. So New York, East Coast band.
The fact that you know this much about them is not a coincidence.
No.
And so we're going to get into that. I was having a little bit of difficulty even conceptualizing how to talk to you about this story.
Yes.
Because at first I thought we were going to talk about the article from Wired by John Semley called "The Fanfare Around the Band GEESE Actually Was a PSYOP."
Okay.
And I thought we would talk about that.
Let's do it.
And then I looked into the source of all this. There was a Substack that blew up from a artist who has a Substack. Her name is Eliza McLam. We're going to get into her.
Okay.
But then I actually went and found the original discussion that all of this is based on.
Wow.
So this is going to be a rare, elusive, a one-of-a-kind three-parter.
So this is a Wholesome Music exclusive.
This really is. We're going to talk a little bit about the story of GEESE.
Okay.
We're going to talk about the agency, the secretive, shadowy agency that has propelled them and many others to fame.
Everybody loves a shadow government.
And we're going to talk about so within that, we're going to talk about, there's going to be a lot of advice that you can take as you are working on your career. There's a lot they know, and they really divulge a lot about the modern media ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk deeply a little bit about the further implications of this story on all of us as consumers of media on the internet.
Yeah.
This, just to put on my tinfoil hat, my Fox Mulder, speech for a second, I want to tell you that this has implications that go to the farthest reaches of how we consume and think about media in the year 2026.
Look at GEESE impacting the whole entertainment landscape.
Literally, nothing will be the same after you hear this.
I'm ready.
I'm not kidding.
Take me down the rabbit hole.
So first, we're going to talk real quickly about this article by John Semley from Wired. Brooklyn indie rockers GEESE shot to the heights of rock and roll fame at the end of 2025. Their fourth album, Getting Killed, was released in late September and dominated the year's top 10 lists. Their fall tour sold out almost everywhere. The collective buzz earned them slots on Saturday Night Live, Coachella, and made the band and the frontman Cameron Winter, who has his own solo career, something close to a household name.
Wow.
The Guardian's review of the new record called GEESE, quote, "the new saviors of rock and roll." Their explosion onto the scene seemingly out of nowhere led to an inevitable backlash, and haters called them a PSYOP. Basically, people were kind of wondering, how does a band get this big out of nowhere?
Yeah.
And so in late March of this year, the co-founders of a digital marketing agency called Chaotic Good came and gave a speech at the notorious South by Southwest.
Yes.
And they talked very clearly about how their viral marketing works. So let's talk about the backlash really quick. Mm-hmm. A lot of this came, I think we just need to mention, there's a Substack. The artist her name is Eliza McLam. Her Substack is called Words from Eliza. She made a post called Fake Fans.
Oh, interesting.
And I just have a quote from her. She actually pulled a quote actually from the from the video, the talk that we're going to get to, a lot of what we do on the narrative side will be controlling the discourse. I think most people see a video or see something about an album that came out, and it's like the first thing they see, or that first comment that they see, is their opinion when they haven't even heard the whole album.
Yeah.
So these guys are talking about controlling the discourse. She really blew the story open. She noted the connections between the frontman of GEESE,
Cameron Winter,
and this agency. This agency also works with, you name it. I mean, Alex,
good. Their name is incredibly familiar.
Yeah, I mean, their roster is like Alex Warren, Somber. I think Childish Gambino. I mean, like,
they're really out here.
Coldplay, they are out here.
That's incredible.
And so all of this came out as a result of this talk that they did, where they kind of gave the secrets of what they do. And this is where, to me, it gets just fascinating.
Tell me about it.
From the top, I'd say the thing to note here is the reason why I think they're able to just give away the entire game. I mean, they're giving away the game.
Yeah.
And they're running a very successful agency right now and getting a ton of artists, a ton of exposure. Not only are they giving away the game, they are the game.
Yeah. And tell me about that.
The reason I think they're able to do that is because it's actually really hard and really involved. And so...
You mean like what they're doing is really difficult and really challenging to accomplish?
Yes. So to back up, we have to to understand what they do. First, let's back up and talk about how bands used to gain exposure. There's traditional PR. You could send your music to press, radio, and you get your record featured in record stores. That still all happens, and that still is part of the game. And if you had success, you had the right kind of backing behind you. The band was of a certain size, the artist was of a certain size. You could book the festivals, you could book the Saturday Night Lives.
Yeah. And
then that would be kind of the moment.
Yeah, you put them on the late night shows, you get that circuit going, you maybe get like physical written press. And then, you create these moments, this digital moment that's kind of like a press tour.
Not even a digital moment, because we're talking pre-digital.
Yeah.
And
a traditional media moment.
There you go, a monoculture moment. And what's interesting is then the early days of digital marketing was essentially recreating the monoculture in a digital landscape. So you remember how they would, in the 2019s, 2020s, when TikTok was really flexing its muscles, TikTok was really out here. The way that you would get a song viral at that time was to pay one of the big influencers.
Yeah.
They call them macro influencers. We have micro influencers and macro influencers. We're talking about the macro, the biggest of the big. I don't know any of their names. I don't follow any. I don't follow that world.
You're talking about someone who has millions and millions or hundreds and millions of followers.
Yes. And so there was a time when that's who you went to get your music out there, and then they would like put your song on the background of them, roller skating or whatever.
And really what you're trying to do with that is to create another monocultural moment.
Yes.
To create that, okay, everyone watches this creator. Now your song is featured with this creator and it's going out to this inbuilt audience.
So what these guys did is they figured, and I'm going to say their names real quick because I'm not going to say their names many times because I wasn't paying attention to who was whom. There's two founders. Their names are Andrew Spellman and Jesse Corin. I'm guessing they're roughly our ages.
Yeah.
And so what these guys did is they came in as music managers. They were doing this work. They were hiring influencers. And they realized that there were certain formulas that occurred when a top creator played your music. And they learned to recreate the conditions, which then tricks the algorithm into thinking those conditions are being met.
Yes.
So now, instead of thinking about like, how do I get a macro creator, they talk about volume and niches. They call it trend stimulation. Trend simulation, not trend stimulation. Trend simulation. They study what happens when an artist goes viral, then they reproduce that on command.
Okay.
And they're very open about this. They have networks of tens of thousands of accounts that they control or have influence over, either directly or people in their networks that I think that are getting paid to influence any kind of narrative they want. And if there isn't a niche that they that they are operating in, they'll spin up a bunch of accounts to create.
This is really interesting because this is something that we've talked about previously. And it kind of like, it works in the same world as, but it's kind of maybe a more legitimate route of doing this, which is having bot farms. So bot farms are traditionally not real accounts. They're not actual accounts run by a person, hence being a bot account. But the use of a bot account, I think a lot of people don't understand. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just to run up my numbers and get a bunch of views. But oftentimes when you're talking about bots being used on a major label scale, it's really about triggering the algorithm, showing in the first 30 minutes or 1 hour or 24 hours of this content going out that there's a huge volume of interaction in that time, giving signals to the algorithm that, okay, this content is working. And then that the algorithm can then push that out. And it sounds like this is kind of leveraging that same type of thing, but with legitimate accounts.
They're doing that, but they're taking it even further.
They're taking it a step further.
So I would say, just to back up the what you said about legitimate accounts, I would say personally, I think it's a bit of a gray. They are legitimate accounts. I would say it's a bit of a gray area because they say their office is full of thousands of iPhones.
Well, then I would assume that they're probably not the most legitimate accounts.
But they are human run. And what they do, just to make it really, really clear, is they do a lot of niche content.
Yeah.
So these aren't like your traditional bot account where you'd be like, all right, there's 10,000 people in Bratislava who all, like streamed my song on Spotify and it's very clearly it's bot. They're a lot more sophisticated than that. So they're doing things like creating a bunch of pages of niche content.
Yeah.
So you've seen all these kinds of content. One of the big ones right now that's really going, which is basically, from what I can tell, it's basically they are the reason why this is so big.
Yeah.
Is they call it the quote on screen format.
Okay.
And you've seen this. We've all seen this. The classic would be like a person holding a cup of coffee.
Yep.
And it'll be like one little quote and a song that's playing.
Yeah.
And the quote will be like eminently shareable. It'd be the kind of thing you'd want. It would be like, in a world full of confusion, the most solid thing is you. Or whatever, right? And so like
clarity.
But it would be something that I would be like, oh, that's really sweet. I'm gonna send that to I'll send that to my boyfriend, right? And like that's the kind of vibe that we're going for.
Yes.
And so these are very shareable. And then they'll put a Alex Warren song or a somber song,
of course.
And so they have all of this stuff for niches. They talk about the different kinds of content that they do. They'll have a whole bunch of niche content for country artists. They've got a lot of rural imagery and trucks and that kind of thing. They said for hip hop, what works really well is actually screenshots of video games being played.
Okay, yeah.
So they study the trends really, really, really hard. And then when they zero in on a trend that can boost an artist's algorithmic engagement, they go ham on it.
Go all in.
So they'll have hundreds of accounts that post this thing or reshare this thing.
Well, and you really need that, right? Like if you're going to because I think you and I have done similar things with independent artists where we're trying to create buzz around something, whether that's like having multiple articles written about someone or having multiple collaborators. If you're releasing someone, bringing in like, okay, cool, we've got another, and usually we're talking about micro influencers, not macro.
Yeah.
But on a much smaller scale, this is kind of the same thing we're trying to do, right? We're trying to create this moment by bringing in all these other accounts, whether it's backlinks, things that are referencing the song, whether that's an article that then links back to your release, or whether it's like an actual collaboration on someone else's page that then links back to you. It's creating all of these moments to hopefully let the algorithm know, like, hey, this is something that's happening.
And what they say is that's the kind of thing that would spur organic growth.
Yeah.
And what they say is they look at what happens organically and they do it inorganically.
Yes.
They just push a narrative. And so this is where I want to go back to the thing you said about like creating a moment and creating algorithmic support, right? Creating algorithmic boosts.
Yeah.
The algorithm pushes it. There's one step further they go. Remember how we talked about what the quote that Eliza pulled on her fake fans post about how they want to control the narrative. Most people, this is quoting now one of the founders, I think most people see a video or see something about an album that came out and it's like the first thing they see or that first comment that they see is their opinion, even when they haven't heard the whole album.
Of course.
So one of the things that they're doing is not only are they getting the content out there, but they're actually being the first out the gate to control the discourse around the content.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. One, maybe taking it a little bit away from this, but keeping in the same family, is there's a new HBO reboot of the Harry Potter series. And they put out a trailer like within the last like week or so. And it's been incredibly poorly received.
Yeah.
And this is a situation where maybe because within the first 24 hours, there were so many people who immediately had, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. And it was very difficult to find any positive kind of spins on it. So maybe this is a situation where being able to control the narrative and have influencers who are going to go out and be like, I loved this part. I loved this so much. And, you know, they have.
And it's not just influencers. It's they
niche specific.
They use the word 100 several times. They say the second the content drops, they want 100 posts saying that this is the best content of the year. So they'll say like, so, and this is really fascinating because I think if they, to take your case of the Harry Potter thing, if they were working this, I think it's pretty clear to say they probably weren't working this. Because
no,
I think
absolutely
if they were,
not.
if there were 2,500 comments saying how bad this is, this company would produce
4,000
saying it was good.
Yeah.
And that's how they work.
Well, and I also think this is really important to note. If you are trying to impact the algorithm, I think you do need to be working at like 100x scale.
Yep.
It doesn't work for you as an independent artist, just so we're clear, to have 5 articles written and hope those 5 links are going to push your new song to newer heights. You need to have 100, 500, and it does need to be very quick. Like having that, like having this interaction with your content within the first 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour of the initial drop of the content, I think is going to make a huge and exponential difference. And obviously, if you're just having like 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, it's not going to have the impact as having 100 or 1,000, like all
or 10,000
all pushing, saying the same thing.
So I really recommend that people go and find this talk. They did a talk. It's online. It's on billboard.com. As always, we will have the link to that.
Yes.
Before we close, I want to take this one step further and talk about the implications of this for us as media consumers, as all of us. They talk a lot about controlling the narrative.
Yes, that's a key phrase we've come back to over and over again.
And that, I think, should be a little bit of a red flag. And this is just something where it's like...
Tell me why you say that.
Well, this is something I just think that, like, my tiny little platform, I want to use this right now because we live in a very interesting time. So here's 3 quotes that are from this talk by one of the founders. Like I said, I didn't track who was who.
Yeah.
Quote number 1, quote, "Unfortunately, a lot of the internet is manipulation."
True.
Quote number 2, "Everything on the internet is fake."
Mostly true.
And then number 3, "All opinions are formed in the TikTok comments." And this is where they...
As a YouTube hoe, as a YouTube whore, I think sometimes they're formed in the YouTube comments.
Well, I think they focus on TikTok. They basically say TikTok is where music goes viral.
That's fair.
And
okay, I see you.
But I do think the same thing is true, and this is where I think we have to apply this as critical consumers and just people who are out here on the media. Basically, this is true. The first comment that people see often becomes their opinion.
I want to dig deep into this because this is the second time we've kind of come to this point, and I think it's a really valid point to kind of talk about and dig deeper into. You and I, we maybe last week or the week before, we talked about Anthony Fantano.
Yeah.
And I think...
Big YouTuber, does album reviews.
Exactly. People like Anthony Fantano and people who are reviewing content, whether it's reactions, whether it's reviews, whether it's traditional media, that's that first time, like the first impact. So maybe you heard the album and then you searched it looking for a review, looking for a reaction. That's often people's first intake. So that's going to be the opinion that they then put into themselves and are like, that's my opinion.
But remember,
and wear around and take to other places.
Yes.
Even if maybe they would have had a different opinion if they had said something else. So if Anthony Fantano had instead of been like, oh, this is a 4.5, he'd been like, oh, this is a 9. Maybe more people would be like, that was great. I like it. I want to support it.
But I want to contend something. What they're saying is it's not necessarily, although I think a huge YouTuber like Fantano or Pitchfork or whoever has a lot of sway. What this is saying is something even there's something different than that.
Even more macro.
This
You're
is
saying what's in the comments.
When I hear that GEESE has a new song, and so I go to youtube.com and I type in GEESE new song, and I click play, and I'm just reading the comments.
Yeah.
The first thing that says, banger of the summer, that goes into my head. If the first comment is, this is a little weak compared to their old stuff, that goes into your head. The very first thing you see, not even the first content you go
I actually would push back. Maybe I'm in a disagreement from the original creator here, from what they're saying, what they're pushing. But I would almost say that it isn't the very first thing you intake, because the very first thing you intake isn't really I think it's the very first thing you trust to intake, because there's difference between content that you trust, something from someone who you know and you validate from, who you're like, this person has a valid point and I believe, or something where there's social proof, like this person has a lot of likes on their
But the social proof is interesting, because what they'll do is they'll have 100 or 1,000 people go in right. So there's basically, because they're on top of this so fast, there's zero chance that you go in without having those comments already there. If it's a campaign that's run by.
But I'm asking you, would you believe it? You go in, you listen to any new song, any random song. How much does it impact your personal opinion?
Listen,
when the comment says.
I'm glad you asked this, because I think this is really key to the final piece of discussion I want to have about us as media consumers.
Yeah.
I think all of us are so much more susceptible to this kind of what they're calling a psyop. I think all of us are so much more susceptible to this than any of us believes. I don't want to think that I'm susceptible to that. I want to believe, but I think the research and the experience has really borne out that the first thing that we see tends to really sway us, especially if we see it 100 times.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, as much as I'd like to believe I'm kind of beyond that, I think the evidence is there that I am really susceptible to that as much as anybody is.
I would still push back, because I think I can understand it, but I do think there's a value. Just to validate right away, I do think that subconsciously this is 100% true.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, I would push back on what opinions we then go and spread. What opinions we then go and tell people that we believe? Because the first thing you see, one, might not align with you morally, or you may have some other aversion to that thing, right?
True.
And
true.
And then you wanna consume or trust the thing, consume or regurgitate and internalize the thing that you trust.
Yep. Well, there's that bias thing, right? And this is where it gets thorny. I think I don't want to get too in the weeds about this. This is where it is thorny about this, because our brains are just not designed to handle the amount of information we receive.
We're on information overload all the time.
Yes. And so this is where this gets really it's one thing to have it be your opinion on the new GEESE song, or the new Olivia Rodrigo. Okay, fine. That might change their career. That might change your listening habits. That's probably sort of fairly innocuous, right?
Yeah.
But these same techniques, and this is where I want people to just be aware of this, to the extent of the handful of people who do engage with our content, is that this is going way beyond music opinion.
Yeah.
These techniques are known, and they are being used in all kinds of applications, in all kinds of opinions that you might think you hold, or that you might have been kind of given to you might have encountered about household products, or politicians, or people's stances on stuff. This thing of these influencer networks, which are not organic, they are the ones saying that this is inorganic. This is happening all over. So not only is this happening in music, this is happening. There are ways that you can leverage this as an artist, and I do encourage you to do this.
Absolutely.
As a consumer, I also encourage you to just be aware of this, and just don't have any sense that you are not susceptible to this.
Yeah.
Understand that you and I are vulnerable to this as anybody else in the world, and this is happening, and this is happening in the kinds of applications that go way beyond music. So this was just one of those things where, when I read this thing, and then I was like, oh, this GEESE is a psyop, and I was like, well, industry has always been, promotion has always been a part of the industry.
Yeah.
This seems like a little bit of a bit of a
clickbait.
Yeah. Thank you. And then I read a little bit, and I was like, kind of confirmed it. right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's clickbait. Like, it's not a psyop, it's a promo campaign. Big
Yeah.
deal. But then you watch the interview with these guys on Billboard.com, which I encourage you to do. You can see that it's so much more beyond that. The power that these people have to shape public opinion, basically by owning and buying a ton of iPhones and then having a bunch of networks of people who operate a bunch of accounts beyond that, is staggering to think about. And I do want you to think about it kind of as, if nothing else, just think about it as a music consumer, as a person who thinks you have opinions on music. And if you're inclined, I want you to think about this on the deeper, kind of more global level in terms of what it is that you think you believe to be true. Because I think there are deep, deep, deep implications. So as I read, when I went to this thing, this is why I said in the beginning, my Fox Mulder voice came in and I was like, this goes to the highest echelons of government. This goes to the lowest of the low. This is a major, major thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to throw this in here at the end is like they say, this is like a really common advertising trope is it takes 7 touch points to make a sale. And a lot of those are things like billboards that you didn't realize you saw on the freeway. And I think this is just another one of those billboards you didn't realize you saw on the freeway, subconscious way to prime your consumers that, hey, this is good.
Yep, absolutely. And so getting one song to go viral by getting a bunch of, by what are they simulating virality?
Yes.
Is a way that they can push a song that maybe we don't all love as much as we think we do. Yeah. It's just they had the right kind of infrastructure behind them.
Oh, and I think that's true for songs like Yummy. Do you remember that song? Songs that you're just hyper overexposed to.
Yeah.
So then, or songs like a bunch of
look, I'm gonna say it.
Five songs.
I'm gonna say it. "Ordinary" by Alex Warren.
Yeah,
that's not that good of a song, and it's everywhere. And that was part of.
Yeah,
he's one of their customers.
Overexposure creates hits.
Yep, it really, really does. It really, really does. So just lots and lots to chew on there. So let us know how you might apply this to your career, where you think you might take some advice from this.
Yeah.
If you think we're off base, if you disagree with me, I know people kind of come in sometimes that I come in a little hot with the lefty shit, but you can leave a comment about that too. I'm happy to hear all that and kind of Thank you for watching the Wholesome Music Podcast, the DIY podcast for DIY musicians. My name is Augustus Watkins.
My name is Cam LJ.
We are doing this content at least twice a week, so please join us on the main feed. Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time.
Yes.